They should really do more in school about like finding the right color shade of red for our lips.
This one's for the disruptors, the uncommon, the unconventional, the rebels. You're not here to take things lying down. Well, season 2 is about shaking things up. I'm Beatrice, and this is the Art of Branding podcast. Be ready, be badass. Let's shake some shit up.
This badass bee is no stranger to business with her first dip into the website world at 19 with a space startup, and then picking up experiences in NFT, finance, photography, all that agileness, if I can say it correctly, to get where she's at now. The thing is, there's creative, pretty, cute, the industry set. Then there's where Taylor, who focuses on personality-centric web design and branding because everything else, well, just fits in. And that's not what we're here about today. There are a shit ton of other creatives out there. You know how it is, right? I know you've gone through iterations of your brand as you've really honed in on your superpowers. Have you found your little space that simply pops and brings your version of edge?
I know for a fact that I have not found my lane. Like, I know where I fit. I know what there is. I know there is still so much further I can go. And I think that's the beauty of it too. And that's what I really love about this side of thing, because you can lean into the place where you want to start. You can lean into the vibe straight off the bat, but then you can play, you can adapt, you can evolve. Like, I think even yourself, you probably feel like there's still places you can go. Like, you have a strong brand, but there's so much more you can play with. And there's something so special about that. And that's why these foundations are so fundamental, is kind of a boring word. Truthfully, it's one of those things where it's like, here's the baseline, here's where you're starting. You've got your base vibes. You can actually go anywhere from here. Just because you're starting at this point, not only does it mean you can reiterate massively in the future, but you can use the starting point as a launch pad to keep going. But the launch pad and the foundation still work. That's okay, I've gone off on a half tangent, but that's what really, really, really hits me about this kind of work as well. Yeah, that's for sure. So have I found it? Working on it? Mostly. I like to say maybe 60%, because I know there is so much more potentially there.
I think all of these different experiences that we've had, they all come together, and it's like subconsciously we don't even recognize it, but it all lines up to what we're supposed to be, in my opinion. So, I've had a shit ton of operations experience, and now, it really makes a lot of sense, because most people in brand strategy, they've like come in from like the graphic world or that sort of thing. And it's like, hey, it might look pretty, but is it really going to work with the team? Is it really going to work in the operations, in the socials, in the marketing, in the customer service, with the sales team? Are they actually going to pick it up? Because if they're not, what is the point of even doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, massively. Massively. And even how you approach brand strategy. I know how I approach brands with like solopreneurs and like the big teams. Man, my first experience was me being thrown into this team of heavens knows how many people. I actually don't remember. I think it was so clustery. Yeah, there were just so many different people involved that you were kind of sitting there trying to work out a brand. Actually, my job even at that point wasn't even branding. I was the back-end dev. I was managing the crew of back-end. That was it. But then you end up designing, because the designer doesn't, get the brand. That should have been alarm bell 1, actually. And then, then writers are coming in and they're kind of like, oh, what the hell is this brand? So you kind of have to come into this place in the middle and go, right, I have to bring together this brand. And you have to coordinate, like, just there, right? All the different teams. And there's such a different approach in coordinating groups versus, just working solopreneurs. There's something, again, really quite special about that difference. Like, yes, there are similarities, but there are massive differences in how you approach everything. Yeah.
It's crazy. And, now going into this personalized approach to websites, it makes so much sense. And I imagine, I bet you see a lot of websites beforehand and you're like,
Yeah.
like it looks like just another,
Yep.
like,
Mm-hmm.
what do those look like? Like, what are the, I don't know, red flags?
That's really difficult to answer because you're sitting here going, okay, the easiest start is about 90% of businesses on your feed. About 90% of businesses look and feel the exact same way. Not for any fault of anyone's own. And that's probably the most important bit. It's nobody's fault that this is the case. It's just because we're all trained for the same messages, the same everything. But there is a point where, for a lot of people, that the real care for what they actually believe in, for what they want their brands or business to look visually like, to feel like, interaction wise, becomes more than that just wanting to keep up. The word here that we like to use is, that carefulness, of like sticking to the norm. And then,
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of those red flags. To me, like, from my perspective, and it's not like something that is my entire focus, because websites is everything what you do, right? For me, like, when I look at a website and it's like all stock photos, or I'm looking at them, their competitors, and the words that they use, okay, they're not identical, but they're pretty much meaning the exact same thing. And it's just like, okay, I see where you're coming into this with. Like, a lot of the time when we're fresh to business, even we're like, straight out of school, we're like, okay, what is this person doing? What is that person doing? How can we, replicate that? But that doesn't work.
that replicate word, and I think it isn't even half the time conscious. Half the time we're not actually
Yeah.
consciously replicating. It's just, again, those messages that are coming at us, and we kind of subconsciously take them on. And we don't even realize, then we start to become really careful with the messages we put out in the world and the way we talk about things and everything like that. And the really powerful brands get to that point of when they care more about what they stand for, what they visually, messagely, strategically want to show up in the world as. And yeah, they just throw caution to the wind almost. And it is very much that kind of idea. One of my favorite stats, and actually I got a comment on it the other day, which is probably the better example here, where someone was literally saying that when I was working in the photography world, people were coming to them because they were doing things differently. Everything looked, felt, the way they structured their packages, the way everything was so different to everyone else that there was no competition. That's kind of where I think a lot of us are ready to go, because we're at this point where we're so used to a normal standard that we're all sick of it. Most people will never leave that standard. So if you're willing to leave that standard, man, you're miles ahead of everyone else. You are miles ahead. And that's why when I talk about where I'm at as well, it's that idea of, no, I'm nowhere near my, maximum, because I know there's so much further to go. So much further. So yeah. So I don't even like putting the terms red flags on it. It's more that idea of you just see the same thing over and over, and it's time to just fucking stop.
These are the beige flags because like they don't even stand out enough.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And okay, some backstory for listeners here. Okay. So before this, since we're talking about reframes, before this, we were talking in the DMs, just backwards and forwards, actually in the comment section on LinkedIn. And we were talking about anti-heroes morally gray characters and villains, and implementing that in business. And we're like, we need to talk about this. We need to dive into this and make this a thing, because you know what? Yes, I see it like in movies. I see it in TV shows. I see it in books. Hell, like, there is a big movement, especially with morally gray characters in books and stuff. So what's wrong with putting into business?
Absolutely nothing. And I think this is the thing is, everyone talks about not only those, but even think about villain errors. Like when we think of people jumping into their villain errors, think Carlos Sainz after he had his appendix pulled out and got dropped from Ferrari. Like, these things are addictive. There's a reason why we're addicted to these kinds of people, kinds of characters. And funnily enough, I still regret to this day that this wasn't my major uni assignment. I could have done it. I picked Eurovision instead, which, hey, it wasn't a bad thing. But can you imagine, like, there is so much research and everything to back this up that, it was a no-brainer, right? It was an absolute no-brainer, and I can't believe, it's what started as a half a joke saying, heck, we should do this.
Let's take villains, for example, right? People think, it's such a negative thing. But I can point out, there's one profile that I saw on LinkedIn, and they leaned into this and made it work. Ooh. So Taylor Swift's song, right? Like one of the lyrics is, "It's me. The problem is me," right? And they've made this into, like, they've integrated this into their copywriting brand, and they're targeting fellow, like, women going, hey, fuck the patriarchy. Yeah, no, they've made this into a brand, and it works. It resonates. Yes, it pushes people away, but you don't want to be working with those kinds of people, right?
Exactly.
You have an idea. I can see
it. No. I'm obsessed with this. I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I do an I'm a Problem, It's Me series? Like, my brain is going off just hearing this, little things like that. And there's just so much to it. And I don't even know where you want to start, because you're going to have to direct this before I go, because I go. When I start, but this is also why I love the idea of, because I know for myself, I've started the whole brand breakdown thing. And it was leaning into those particular characters, particular things, because there is so much we can learn from these,
So, like, okay, let's take villains.
Let's take villains. Can we kind of group them all together, because they do kind of all meld, and that's the difficult thing, I think.
You know what? I've been thinking about this morning. Morally gray. What would that look like as a business?
Okay, so I wouldn't even call it morally gray. I'd call it, what you're doing here is you're probably taking the traits, right? So you think about these people, a lot of morally gray characters are called morally gray because they have a set of beliefs and they stick to them. And they may not be the right thing, they may not be necessarily the wrong thing, but, like, they have a belief and they'll do whatever it takes to get there, or, to stick to that. And that's where, the gray kind of starts coming in here, right? And that's something. That's something. So it's like, for me personally, the biggest thing about these characters is they have a belief and they fucking stick to it. They stick to it so deeply that, again, it comes down to the idea of throwing the caution to the wind. Once they have something, they'll go over it. Did you watch House of Dragon the other day? When Daemon said, I'm going to go and fix this problem, he went and fixed that problem. Screw everyone else,
That is such a big thing that businesses can really leverage in, because most businesses that I see, they're very much like they're afraid to have a specific kind of opinion that, let's not rub some people the wrong way. And then there's people that, like, really lean into that, and they're like, there's things that they don't even necessarily believe in, right? But the things that, like, actually they believe in it, like, in that thing, and they lean into it and they talk about it. Like, say, for example, a big one is like Patagonia that I see. right?
Mm-hmm.
They say like our business is not fashion. This is not our thing. And like people are just like, wait, what? Like it's about making that long lasting quality item, right? They're not there to compete against Prada, like Chanel, like other fashion brands. They've completely reframed and repositioned themselves.
Yeah. And oh man, there's so many different examples too of like even personal brands that do this. Like the first person who comes to mind for me personally is Erica Reitman, who, okay, she's a coach, but she's like the anti-coach almost. I think she used to call herself almost the anti-coach. One of the first people that come to mind for myself is like Erica Reitman, who's a business coach, but she's so left of field business that it isn't even like traditional business coaching anymore. And that's when like she has opinions. Girl, she has so many opinions. And then the fact that she has a hill to die on. That's why all of us are obsessed with what she does, right? And that's when, you know, exactly what you said there about Patagonia. They have a hill to die on. And they will die on that hill. Whereas again, a lot of people don't. Yeah, think about that. Lean into that at all. But if you had, and anyone that you've worked with, like, have you had one thing that maybe you've always said to really help them lean into that as well? Because I think it's easy for us to have this conversation, say, yeah, pick a hill to die on. But why? You know what I mean?
It needs to be something at the end of the day that you've always believed in. That's something that's you will continue talking about it when other people stop. Outside of, like, say, for example, when you're having business conversations, outside of, say, for example, when you're on social media, if you're having a conversation with someone else as a business owner, right? And there's a topic which, like, it really lights up a fire. And, you know, hell, if it's something that reflecting is challenging, have an ask of your friends, like, hey, you know, what is it that like I'm really passionate about? Because I'm sure like they're going to be like, oh, you know, this is specific about you.
Yeah.
Chat to like that outside party and see what really resonates, and then lean into that. And then as a business, right, it is like having that conversation with the team, and without having that expectation like this needs to be like a serious meeting. We're going to be talking, you know, get in there, fix the time obviously, because otherwise it's going to go all like downhill from there, right? We're going to sit down 20 minutes and talk about like the things that make us us. What does the team think? Like that their approaches differently, at what the business represents differently, right? What can you guys really lean into that others aren't? Because hell, if you're not like feeling that creative element, perhaps one of your team might be like, hey, by the way, I've noticed this. But it's having that environment in the business where they are able to speak up and they are able to say these things.
Oh, hugely. Hugely. There's, yeah, so many instances that I've seen other people being able to say things almost better than what like a founder can themselves. And it's really interesting to always bring in that outside perspective, even if you aren't, you know, a team founder and you are a solopreneur. Like bringing in the coach and people maybe you work with, like there's always value in that. There's so much value in that.
Be it morally great characters, be it anti-heroes, be it like the modern day villains. Like there are those elements, you know, both the good and the bad.
Yes.
Right? You need to get a piece of paper, list the things that you stand for, list the things that you don't stand
Big
for.
time. Big time.
And then even to the point of like really defining who you want to work with, and what's even easier, who you don't want to work with.
Every time. Every
What does
time.
that look like?
Every time. If anything, I love those who do not want to work with, who like do not necessarily want to associate with. What do you not want to come across as? Much as we like, not talking about the nots and the no's, I think there is so much value in actually saying, this is not what I want. Because as soon as you start doing that, that's your leverage point. Well, your point of going, oh, hell, I'm going in the wrong direction. We need to rejig, pull. But I love what you said there too about the good and the evil and the good and the bad. Because you know how we always talk about you know how we're always talking about authenticity, right? How
Yeah.
often are we talking only about the bad? Authenticity has kind of become about, the vulnerability in terms of the negative and the kind of stuff that's kind of happened that's been not so great, and the lessons you've learned, things like that. Can we start talking more about the things you're fucking proud of? And the things you really, 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 really are proud of, and you're really fucking reckon good at them? Can we start leaning into things you're really good at, the things you're really proud of, the things that light you the hell up as well? Because I think that's the other thing. A lot of people call these characters arrogant. I wouldn't call them arrogant at all. I actually don't like the term arrogant because arrogant is subjective. Confidence is not. Confidence is a trait, whereas arrogance depends on someone's scale and opinion of that, right? So the ability to be not only confident in the mistakes and the not so great and the lessons you've learned, but also in what you're good at. That's another thing that we can definitely take from these characters and in the stories that we tell and the things where, put out, share and everything like that. Because I don't know about you, but my feeds kind of become a lot of, honestly, it's been a lot of down recently. And it's like, hi, what are you good at? I want to celebrate with you,
And not going past that into like
Yes.
showing off kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this, it's almost like, hey, this works for this person, let's replicate it. Or, these are like the how-to, the steps, etc. But instead of that, diving into that story, showing that human element, like talking about that villain. Okay, yes, we were talking about, integrating villains is like, hey, making that business stand out, but also having your own villain, really defining that, and then making sure that it's not just you that is the villain, like that you resonate with that villain. Your audience needs to be like, oh my God, like, how we started this conversation earlier.
Yeah.
We were talking about like, lipstick color, right?
Yeah.
And in that, that can link back to society and society's teaching and like, all the things that we learn in school aren't actual life skills. Like we don't learn to do the taxes. We, adulting, making our own food, like keeping the fridge stocked. Seriously.
Oh yeah.
So I know you've been on the first season, so I'm not going to ask the same question that I asked on the first season. I know. Can you believe like it's been a year since our first episode? But new question for the season is what inspires you? What like inspires you to disrupt, to shake things up, to be your own kind of edginess, to stand out?
I think it all starts from, I had a really interesting conversation with someone a while back, and they said for all us business owners, we all start with something. Like there is a wound, isn't probably quite the right word, but there is something that there's an itch, there's a scratch, there is something there that pushes us into this. And I always like to say that for me, my disruptive tendencies all started with a massive lean in to my own kind of, villain origin story, really. It was that whole entire, you get thrown, exactly what we were saying earlier, thrown into a project where you're kind of forced to manage this thing. You're kind of working like this, head against the guys who don't want anything to happen, head to head with the COO, because they're trying to make something happen where the head guy won't make anything happen, all this. And you wanted something really great to happen and you had to walk out. I had to leave. I had to get out of it. It was no, and I think that's what really started that. But then combining, so that's the wound. Then you combine it with just a need or want to see people do really freaking well. That's what it is. I think it really stems from that, and that idea of, I want to see more life in businesses again. I don't want to see people want to burn down their businesses. Like, of course, we're going to go through seasons of the highs and the lows and everything like that, but I want people to be remembered, and I want to be part of that. There's something there. There's something massive there.
I love that. That's like a complete loop around to how we started this in terms of, basing on that original, like that villain story. So
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on, girl. Really appreciate it. And you can connect with Taylor through the deets in the podcast show notes.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Branding podcast. A great way to support more people to create their badass brand is dropping a 5-star review. And ready to shift your business from just another to the obvious one, visit badassrybybee.com to get started. Let's freaking go. Let's go.
Time for bloopers. Yay!
Sorry, I totally assumed we were going for an hour, so I was like, yeah, going for it. It's like, wait, what? The end?
Jesus Christ, chill. I don't even know what I was just saying. No, okay. That's what I was saying. Business owners, they're like so freaking, like, no. Now I'm doing what you were doing before. It's like blah, blah, blah. Oh, God.
Wait, that's it.
No, I see that so often. We're always like, hey, we need to look like a hero. But, maybe people aren't really after heroes. Everyone after, like, hey, I'm going to be the hero in your story. But, okay, yes, the thing is, like, you should be the guide, of course. But beyond that, like, aren't morally gray, like, anti-heroes, all these other things, like, they're bringing that dynamic, that humanness, that especially now with AI.
That. Mm-hmm. Oh,
like,
massively.
That's what stands out. That's what's.
Yes, the define.
You live like all these ideas, and you're like,
yeah,
girl, I need to.
This is the thinking that I was so ready to say, but. The thing is, these characters, they defy a category. The hero is kind of like this one, woohoo, we can put them in this place, that's it. Like, pedestal, amazing. These villains, morally grey characters, they are literally defying categories. That's what makes it so important. That's literally differentiation. It's what you talk about. It's what kind of like I lean into technically. It's all about, being that memorable character and just, defying the norms, defying what the category, the industry, whatever, boundaries put on you, traditionally mean. And that's otherworldly. And that's why, this is why we're obsessed with them. Why do you think all the book girlies are obsessed with the morally grey fictional guys? Like,
exactly.
Why is race? This. Yes.
For people who don't know the backstory behind this, like go read what is it? A Court of Roses and Thorns series.
Other way
or maybe
around.
don't. Like
No, but okay, we could all get into the chokehold that Akatar has on like culture and everything. Like that's a whole other topic. We can have that conversation later. But yeah, there's so much, like we can take a lot from even understanding, even reading trends. Again, whole other conversation. But it is quite an interesting thing to lean into and to peep at. But yeah, memorability overall, right?
Exactly. And you know that there's that big cultural thing of like, hey, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. And that is so well known. It's so relatable.
Yes.
Why not lean into that? Let me be the devil's advocate. Like it's perceived as a bad thing. It's perceived negatively. But in a way, like it has that balance.
Oh yeah.
You know, maybe there's like just two gray little like beings on both shoulders rather than like the black and white.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's it.
They should really do more in school about like finding the right color shade of red for our lips. Like, girl, what? Like, oh my God. They don't teach this in school.
Yes. Or everyone should have the experience of actually going to someone who knows this stuff. I think that one's the big one because honestly, I wouldn't trust a school teacher to teach me that kind of shit for anything. But if you go to the right people, they know, like, when they know, right? It's kind of like what we talk about with like perfumes, like the scent is the scent. Everyone has their distinctive scent, and that's it. Like, when you find it, you find it. And
like, you might have done it.
I mean,
it has your name.
Oh no. No, maybe that's just a my end thing.
Wait, where are you?
Oh, hang on. Stop
I can't hear
moving.
you.
Is that a me fault? Oh, hang on. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We got this.
Sweet.
We got this.
Amazing.